Hi, this is Taryn Lupo, and welcome back to Pirates of Savannah Audio Book, Chapter 23. We are almost there. How will it all end? Check out lupolilink.com and help support me by buying one of my products. Thanks.
Chapter 23 Checkmate. We need to find safe harbor and hide for a bit while we fit our new ship. Do you have any ideas where we could go that is unwatched? April queried. Sam spoke up.
Captain, I would suggest that Spanish chain of islands around the tip of Florida. The locals call it Cayo Hueso.
Audrey added,
Yes, that literally means bone key because the island is littered with unburied human skeletons. Because of this dark nature, I have heard that some sailors leave the word bone out of the title, simply calling the islands the Keys. If you ask me, I have a theory about the culture that left all those bodies. What I think...
April cut her off.
If you want us to shelter there, you best not tell me any more about the dark energy of a dead culture that inhabits them. Sam, take us to the Key Islands right away.
The Vendetta sailed to the island chain without incident, and then began its overhaul and refitting. April was very particular about what she liked, and she started to modify the ship for extra speed. 2 weeks had passed when a noise interrupted the work. The sounds of screams vibrated through the decking. Marion was not having a fast and easy delivery. Miss Bias threw open the door and yelled,
I need more water, quickly.
The dumbfounded group of men tripped over themselves, scrambling up the stairs. The midwife laughed at their awkward scramble, and then got back to work. Margie waited outside the door, ready to shuttle in water. Miss Bias had delivered many babies, and she knew how dangerous birth could be. Marion also knew the grim reality, too. The longer and the more difficult the delivery, the less the chances the baby and she would survive. Many anxious hours passed until a baby's cries filled the air. As the strength of the newborn increased, the mother's strength decreased. The baby boy was placed in his mother's arms as Miss Bias tried in vain to stop the massive blood loss oozing from her. Marion smiled as she stared down onto her new life.
Look how much he looks like Archibald. That will be his name.
She held her baby in her arms, smiling as her life bled out from her. Heather was yelling at Miss Bias to save her, but the uterine bleeding could not be stopped. The crowd of women cried as Marion passed on. Heather picked up the tiny Archibald and held him while he was cleaned and dried off. Each person said a prayer to whomever they prayed to, so as to protect the baby Archibald from the island's dark energy they feared cursed Marion. The crew did a traditional Scottish burial that mirrored her husband's. Her bones would at least be buried on the Keybone Island, so as not to join the rest of the skeletons scattered above ground. After Marion's funeral, the group reminisced about her courage and her kindness. William threw her a traditional Scottish funeral party, and the dancing ensued. 2 more weeks had passed, and life on the ship had returned to routine. They enjoyed exploring all the different islands of the Keys while they foraged for supplies. Audrey Scott was bursting with excitement as she spent hours doing her own research at every spot they stopped at. A group of children prodded Margie into approaching April and asking her a question.
Captain, you know All Hallows Eve is approaching, and the children want to know if we'll be participating.
A cold wind blew in as the mood on the deck darkened. April turned to the kids hiding behind Margie's leg and spoke to them directly.
I celebrate Samhain, not All Hallows Eve. Do you children know what that is?
The little ones shook their heads no.
The year is divided into 2 parts, a light half and a dark half. On October 31st, the light half gets overtaken by the dark half. On that night, time and space become muddied, and the veil between life and death is at its thinnest. The living world and the dead world can mix together. It is rumored that the elders could do sacred rituals to make people swap worlds. The living would be transported and lost in the world of the dead, whereas the dead would come back and walk in the world of the living. You need to be extra careful you do not accidentally invite a dead spirit onto our ship.
William interrupted and took his turn scaring the children.
To us Scots, that night's very frightening. Bogies and bogeymen come from the ghost world and will hide under your bed or tap on your window. On that night, you must never cross a gate, stile, or fence, because the bogeyman are always hiding on the other side waiting for you.
Sam cut in to keep April and William from continuing to terrify the children.
Why don't you just celebrate a nice Christian's holiday and go souling on November 2nd for All Souls Day?
Patrick questioned. I never understood what knocking on strangers' doors and begging them for soul cakes had to do with heaven.
Well, us Catholics can get stuck in a place called purgatory. It's an empty holding land between hell and heaven. If your loved one gets trapped there, the only way out is to receive enough prayers,
Sam explained. Oh, I get it. So you bribe these beggar children with raisin spice cakes, and in return they pray for your loved one's soul to help them escape purgatory, Patrick summarized.
Correct. You got it. Although I have to admit the church just took this holiday from the Roman pagan festival of the Mura. They thought it would be an easier transition for pagans if they repackaged the All Hallows Day holiday and moved it from May 13th to November 1st. I think the church figured if they put it close enough to Samhain, it would bleed the life out of the celebration. The church don't like you knowing this history none, and I got a swollen lip for asking a nun about it once.
Patrick turned to the children. A cold wind blew back up, and a darkness grew around him. I think these children should be more worried about keeping away from Jack O'Lantern. Jack was such an awful, evil soul that not even hell wanted him, and the devil sent him back to walk the earth. The devil took a burning ember from hell and gave it to Jack so he could search for souls at night. The only way to confuse Jack is to carve a turnip into a scary face and put a candle in it. I don't think we have any turnips on board, but I saw we have a squash and a pumpkin that might work. If you carve them and light them up, it'll protect our barkie. The children grew excited about designing, carving, and illuminating the gourd. Seamus entered his thoughts.
I say you skip the whole spooky holiday and put all your energy into hating the British government. Let's have a Guy Fawkes bonfire night on November 5th. It is close enough to your creepy holidays.
April spoke up. Oh no, I just got this barkie the way I like it. I won't tolerate a bunch of children wearing masks, starting fires, and breaking the ship up. Patrick interrupted. I never understood what this holiday is all about. Someone tell me who Guy Fawkes is and why all the children burn and destroy the town on that night. Seamus replied,
In 1609, a Catholic rebel named Guy Fawkes wore a theatre mask and tried to blow up the House of Lords with 36 kegs of gunpowder. The angry British government had him hung, drawn and quartered, and then threw the pieces of his body into a bonfire. Every year after that, the children of London half mocked, half honoured him by taking to the streets and causing chaos. They wear masks, beg, parade, vandalize, and set bonfires.
So you want us to celebrate a pro-Catholic terrorist who dresses like a harlequin? Patrick replied.
Yes, sort of. But you're not allowed to say it like that. I want to celebrate his spirit of standing up against oppression.
Isaac interjected.
No, he didn't stand up against oppression to the idea of all tyranny. He wanted to supplement one tyrant with another, to remove a Protestant king with a Catholic king. I will not celebrate such an act.
Fuck you, you rat-dick bastard. That man be a hero. Your Jewish brain's just incapable of understanding things like this.
The Irishman pouted. April stepped in front of the children and delivered her decision.
Keeping with the spirit of this ship, you children can celebrate anything you want as long as it does not harm someone's liberty or their possessions. Enjoy yourselves.
The group continued debating over Guy Fawkes, while the children ran off to find the pumpkin. Sam Scurvy could barely steer Archibald's vendetta straight because he was so distracted. Mariana, Prudence, and Heather looked lovely in the afternoon light as they passed the newborn back and forth. After a while, they handed Archibald back to Margie for feeding. He was then hypnotized as they combed each other's hair. April slapped Sam on the back of the head and commanded,
"Mind your wheel, sailor."
"Sorry, Captain, but they be like sea sirens to me. I'm falling under their song. How do 3 women reach this age without being married already? I do not understand,"
Sam Scurvy pleaded.
Men are so thick in the head. Do you really not know, sailor?
"Captain, you've only known them a few weeks. What did they tell you?"
They did not tell me anything. It's as obvious as the wart on your nose, sailing master.
"I do not understand. What is so obvious? I must know what they're thinking so I can steal one's heart. Arr!"
You know, you're trying to sell a dog to a woman who prefers cats.
"I'm so lost. Which one of them is selling a dog?"
Sam Scurvy was confused.
Christ! Take a good look at them right now.
Sam surveyed the women. All 3 were standing side by side, and Heather had both arms around their waists. She slowly slid both hands down their buttocks and gave them a playful squeeze. Mariana and Prudence smiled, and the 3 women squeezed closer together.
"Oh. Oh. Oh. You mean the 3 of those lasses only like other ladies, and the 3 of them are in love? Curse my luck. You know you'll run the strangest barkie in the world. I don't think this ocean will ever see such a collection of oddities again. Great. Now that baby has 3 mothers, and I go to bed again with swollen cherries,"
Sam exclaimed, shaking his head. She belted out a great laugh and nodded her head in agreement until her mind started to wander. Captain April Reed quickly realized she was in trouble keeping both ships afloat and sailing the same direction. Since taking on the Archibald's vendetta, both ships were horribly understaffed. The crew was exhausted from working double shifts for a week, and she knew she had to find some extra hands. Not just any hands would do, though. She only wanted a crew that would live under her philosophy of liberty.
Where would I find such a crew? She thought.
Everyone was at a breaking point, and both crews needed sleep. The weather had finally looked safe enough to drop anchor and let everyone sleep. The captain gave the order to both ships to stop and rest. Within hours, the only souls awake were the watchmen. The crew got a very long sleep, followed by a day of relaxation on the deck in one of the key islands. Patrick ran up topside of the Archibald's vendetta and announced, "Look what someone left behind in the captain's quarters." He ran up to Isaac with a wooden box. "Sit down. We're going to have a game." Isaac humored his excited friend and sat down. The wooden box opened up into a painted chess set with wooden pieces stuffed underneath. Patrick beamed with a smile. "Now's your chance to finally beat me after all these years."
"I will part your pawns like Moses parted the Red Sea, old friend."
The men wasted no time getting started, and after 10 minutes a large crowd gathered around. "Checkmate, Isaac. You really got to remember to watch your bishop pins." "Who's next?" he challenged to the crew. Sailor after sailor played, and Patrick quickly and effortlessly destroyed them all. Seamus was cussing at Patrick, accusing him of making up a move. "No, really, Irishman, it's a real move called an en passant. If you move your pawn to the 4th rank in one move, and my pawn is one file over and also on the 4th rank, I can slide behind your pawn on the 3rd rank on your file and capture it," the scarred-faced man explained. Seamus knocked the board over and stomped off mumbling. April finally sat down and questioned,
"I never did understand this game. Can you explain it to me?"
Chess is a war, and each side is equally matched. The game is over when you capture the king. He picked up the king and handed it to her. But the funny thing is, your king is the weakest piece. She smiled and asked the question she already knew the answer to. Then what piece is the strongest? Her husband smirked back at her. That would be the queen, my love. She's the most dangerous piece on the board. The chessboard is set up much the same as this ship, my wife. He laughed. So, husband, I did not know you had such a gift for strategy. Do you think you can apply that to pirating? I am excellent in chess with setting traps and swindles. Perhaps I could use the same philosophy and such and apply it to bigger pieces. Well, me wolf, I need to find me a crew, and soon. Patrick sat back and pondered the question. Well, I do have an idea. It would take our weaknesses and turn them into our strengths. What a fine catch you were, husband. April beamed at him. Do explain. The concussions of the cannon's firing vibrated through the Robin's deck. Hurry up and raise that English jack. Make sure they can see that we are fellow countrymen. Garland, throw some more sand down so we don't slip in all this blood on the deck. April shouted orders over the ruckus of the battle. The large Spanish vessel bared its cannons down on the Robin. A large grey cloud hung between the two ships. Orders were shouted over the noise. We have to head to that British slave ship. Sail us right up to her broadside. The Robin swung her bow around and went full sail toward the English slave ship. The large Spanish pursuing vessel continued its merciless assault by cannon. The English slave ship turned and plotted a course dead through the two battling ships. Seeing this, the Spanish vessel broke pursuit and started to flee. April pushed Sam's lifeless body off the helm and took the wheel. She was closing too fast and ordered the wind be let out of her sails. She looked across the deck and sadly spied Isaac and Patrick's bodies, also in a motionless blood heap. The English slave vessel was now in shouting range. The horses and children were covered with copious amounts of crimson and ran to the rail. Please help us! Please help us! Spanish privateers murdered me husband! A skinny woman named Carla shouted. A cackle of women joined in and yelled at the vessel to stop. The slave ship captain surveyed the Robin's bloody deck. He snapped shut his spyglass and ordered the crew to stop and help the women. In under a minute, grappling hooks tied the ships together, and they dropped a gangplank between them. The hysterical women stormed across the wooden bridge and poured onto the deck. They threw their arms around the English sailors. Thank you for saving us, Miss Blythe said as she kissed a man on the cheek. The scullery wench Teresa shouted something in Greek or Italian and flung herself into the arms of a surprised officer. April ran over to the captain and hugged the man. Thank you. They killed my husband. A crooked smile came over the slave captain. So you lasses be all alone. Hey, lads, these women be sailing all alone now. Let's go over and examine their ship to see if we can help. His mind was already plotting. He flung the grieving woman to the deck. Fuck it. Lass, I'm going to help myself to your ship, and then I'm going to help myself to you. Crew, take their vessel. Belay that order, April yelled as she slid her knife up to the captain's testicles. The women who were just hugging the crew pulled their hidden knives and held them to their rescuers' throats. Nobody has to die. Just do what we say and we'll let you sail away. April pressed the knife up hard against her captor's crotch as she stood back up. Stand down, lads. Do what she commands, the captain shouted in a panic. April let out a belting, high-pitched whistle, and the deck of the Robin started to stir. The bloody men rose from the dead and stormed the gangplank with pistols drawn and cutlass in hand. The sight of the walking dead storming their deck terrified the slave ship crew. Patrick had 4 flintlocks tied around his neck and hung down his chest. Isaac armed himself with a short blunderbuss jam-packed with pig shot. Wooden bandoliers filled with pre-made wads of shot and powder hung across him, shoulder to waist. The men trained their guns on the rest of the slave ship's crew. April shouted more orders. Isaac,
Take Sam and 15 men and clear the cannons below deck."
Aye, Captain.
the hulking man said as he began to gather his own war party. Both ships shook as a hole opened on the side of the Robin. Smoke and shivers from the hull hung in the air.
"Isaac, stop those cannons now!"
the captain ordered. Isaac's party stormed down the stairs as screams of agony came from the hole in the Robin. When the men found the cannons, they noticed 3 men desperately loading another shot. Isaac's party quickly overwhelmed the slavers and subdued them.
Men, search well and make sure there are no other souls manning a cannon.
By the time anyone noticed, it was too late. The large Spanish vessel took advantage of the situation and approached with their cannons trained on them. As they got broadside with the slave ship, they pulled their Spanish jack down. Mariana's father yelled from the deck of Archibald's Vendetta,
"We heard the cannon fire. We have you covered."
Some loud Scottish cursing could also be heard from a man in a kilt. Now that the ruse was over, the Vendetta loaded their cannons with balls and not just powder charges. Isaac dragged the 3 gunners to the deck and returned topside.
Just these 3 gunners, Captain. No other cannons were manned.
"Tie them to the rail until we know what their judgment be,"
the tattoo woman barked. The women stripped all the sailors of the slave ship and took their weapons. Margie, an ex-whore turned broodmare, currently had 9 children on the Robin and was wet nursing Archibald. The mother ran across the gangplank screaming,
"Murder!"
Her dress was so soaked with blood, it was dripping a trail behind her as she ran. She was crying so loudly, April could barely understand what she was saying through the sobbing.
"Did you say the cannon shot killed 3 of your children below deck?"
She hugged the bawling Margie.
"Come with me,"
the captain mumbled stoically. Captain Reed stood over the 3 men and demanded,
"Which one of you gave the order to open fire on a vessel of women and children?"
2 of the frightened sailors both yelled,
He did,"
as they pointed their heads to the man in the middle.
"I ordered the cannon to be fired, and I wish I had time for another shot at you pirates,"
the slaver in the middle arrogantly exclaimed. Margie screamed and snatched Isaac's blunderbuss out of his hands. Before anyone could stop her, she held the firelock to his face and pulled the trigger. The large mouth of the gun erupted in a huge cloud of gray. When the smoke cleared, it revealed a headless body.
"Fuck me! Crazy bitch blew his face right off!"
One of the other 2 men yelled as the third pissed his pantaloons.
Wait!
One of the restrained men begged. "I was just following orders. I'm a good man. I'm innocent."
"Innocent? You piece of dog shit! You loaded the cannon that killed me 3 wonderful children. You think you're not responsible if you just load the weapon and pack the powder? You should have had the courage not to follow an evil order. Good men following evil orders is still evil, you son of a whore."
Margie yelled. She grabbed 2 pistols from April's belt and unloaded them into the man's eyes. The bullets pierced on both sides, and brain matter splattered back out the gaping eye sockets. The remaining man wept out loud.
"Please, show mercy. I should have had the courage to say no to the master gunner, but I didn't. I'm a coward. Please don't kill me."
April stepped in front of Margie as she pulled her knife to kill the remaining assailant.
"These were your children, and by right, these men's lives are yours to take. But consider mercy and a less hasty decision. Instead, seek for restitution to your family. It might feel good to kill this man, but it does not help you raise and feed the rest of your children. Consider, instead, restitution. This man will work and serve your family until you feel you have been made whole, which might never happen. We'll make this man work to replace the labors and profits your children would have contributed to your family."
Margie stomped back and forth, fingering her knife, thinking out loud and reasoning.
"I want to kill him. I want to send him to hell and get raped by devils. You know, that's what happens to children murderers. They get arse-fucked by devils. Captain, what you said rang true in my ear. Take him over to the ship and tie him up until after I bury my children. But I will kill him later if I change my mind.
Thank you for your mercy. I will make this right. I am so sorry. The man cried as Isaac dragged him across the gangplank. Margie followed Isaac, kicking the man and warning him to hold his tongue. April turned her attention to the slave ship captain. You stole these men and did unspeakable things to them. We're here to free them, and if you behave, you can take your ship and sail off when we be done. Do you understand? The terrified captain nodded his head in understanding. The tattooed woman ordered Teresa, Go fetch Mingo. He is an African man with tribal scars all over his face. The Greek or Italian brown-haired woman nodded and ran to retrieve Mingo, returning with him in short time. Audrey cut in. Mingo speaks almost every African dialect and has been teaching me. He's definitely the best choice, Captain. A tall black man stood in front of the captain and asked,
What you have me do?
I want you to translate my message and make these slaves understand. Okay, open the hatch to the cargo bay. Mr. Michael and Mr. James flung the hatch door open and vomited on each other. The putrid smell overtook the lovers before they could get away from the hatch. Even Seamus, with his disgusting odor, was repulsed. Screams and yells erupted from the hole. Mingo, would you shout this down into the hold? April asked. We're here to rescue you. Please do not attack us. You are safe. You will be free to go back home. If you have no home to return to, then please consider working for us on our ship. Mingo had to yell a few times until the frightened slaves quieted down and listened. It took some time to yell the message in so many dialects. Shouting of excitement resonated up the hatch.
They understand, Captain. They ready.
Mingo smiled. Get the gangplanks ready for the Robin and the Vendetta. Okay, lower the ladder. Mingo lowered the ladder down and nobody came up. What the hell is going on here? April demanded.
They all still be chained,
Mingo said. Give me the keys now, she threatened the slave ship captain. The captain complied. Then April threw them to Patrick. Go down and unlock them with Mingo. Patrick and Mingo wrapped a cloth around their mouths and noses and descended into the dark, ammonia-filled hole. Patrick's eyes immediately burned, and the smell brought back terrifying memories of the King's Debtors' Prison back in London. It took a few minutes for his eyes to adjust, until he realized there was no floor. It was shoulder-to-shoulder bodies chained to the floor. Patrick wanted to vomit, but he could not find an open space on the deck. Many of the slaves were locked down with one long chain. Mingo had seen these before when he was a slave, and he knew how the chains and locks worked. Slaves screamed and begged to be released first. Mingo carefully stepped over the bodies and unlocked the chain. Patrick pulled the long strand up, and the prisoners tried to jump to their feet. So weak and malnourished were they, many of them had to be lifted out of the shit and piss-soaked floor. Their epidermis was raw from urine burn, and some were missing patches of skin that stuck to the deck when they pulled them up. Mingo and Patrick slowly helped them up the ladder one by one, while Seamus and Sam helped from the topside. The Robin's crew expected to see elated throngs of slaves pouring out the hatch in excitement. Instead, they saw a sad and depressing sight of men, women, and children, too weak to walk. Sam Scurvy helped a man take very painful steps up the gangplank. He sympathized with his scurvy pain. He remembered his long walk to the Robin all those years ago. The process took hours, and April was growing irate from watching this parade of skeletons slowly board her ships. Patrick reported back to April. I would say there's about 130 we saved, Captain. They're all aboard, and they're ready to depart, but there are about 15 dead bodies that had been chained to the live ones. I also saw some of the mothers refuse to leave the bodies of their dead children, and they carried their corpses to the Vendetta. Anger came across April's face. Husband,
Throw these prisoners in the same hold they made their slaves live in.
The Robin's crew started forcing the prisoners down the hatch.
I thought you said we could sail away and you would leave us in peace,
The ship captain yelled.
I changed my mind after seeing what you did to these poor souls. I will leave you with your lives, but I'm going to give your ships to these slaves for restitution. Because of your crimes against them, you owe them much more than the price of this ship. Count your blessings I do not let them press you into being their slaves. Now climb down in the hold with all those rotting bodies you killed.
April commanded and trained a flintlock on the man. Mr. James and Mr. Michael battened down the cargo hatch after the prisoners were loaded.
You should chain them to the shite-covered floor like they done to those Africans,
Seamus snapped.
I want guards on the hatches. Audrey, where's an island we can maroon these men at that is isolated?
The tattoo woman questioned.
There's an island close to Charlestown that would work. I'll show Sam where it is on the chart. Let us dump these slavers and clean up and feed these poor souls. Nina and Teresa, you are in charge of nursing them back to full strength. Find Rose. She speaks many African dialects and should come in useful.
April walked up to her husband.
I think they'll make a fine crew. Who better to embrace the ideas of liberty than a group of former slaves?
She reached out and handed him the wooden king from the chess set. She smiled at him and announced,
I rather like this game called chess. I think I'm supposed to say checkmate now.
The crews of 3 ships watched as the crew of the slave ship swam to the shore. April showed mercy by giving them some barrels of fresh water until they collected their own rainwater. She also sent them off with some fishing hooks, bait, and a few knives.
Muster all 3 crews and the ex-slaves as well,
April commanded her husband. She had decided she would train Patrick as her quartermaster, and even made up a title position she bestowed on him called Master Strategist. It took some time to bind the 3 ships together so all ears could hear. Mingo and the whore Rose would translate the captain's words to the freed men. The boatswain whistle blew, and the crew started to settle down.
All quiet down. Admiral Reed wishes to address her crew,
Patrick barked out.
Admiral,
she whispered to her husband. I know. I don't have the same seafaring knowledge as you, but I'm pretty sure you call anyone who commands more than one ship an admiral, her new quartermaster replied. She smiled at him.
I think you be right, my wolf. I be going to explain to you the rules of this small fleet. Unlike rumors you hear in the pub tales, most real pirate ships are not run by an iron fist. Each of your crew gets a vote on major decisions. If you don't like the way a vote went down, and you're uncomfortable with it, you'll be free to leave the fleet and rejoin us when you're comfortable. Unlike military vessels, you're free to leave any time you want. We're trying to create something so special that you don't want to leave. This fleet will be a symbol of freedom to the world. We will not interact with each other using force or threats. I want this to be the only place in the world that you can be truly free. You'll get paid for work. If you're lazy and don't contribute to the crew, then you won't have silver to eat. We will not be the pirates of old. They were hunted down and murdered because they got too greedy and attacked everyone they saw. We will not steal from other innocent sailors. The only vessels we will take will be that of the governments. Vessels who owe us restitution and payback for all the damage they have done to our lives. These military vessels are paid for by money they stole from us and the lives of our loved ones who they murdered. We will take all our stolen money back that we can. To the slaves we have liberated, I offer you this. I will give you the slave ship to return to your home. But if you have nothing to go back to, I ask you to join our fleet of liberty. You will be free men, treated as equals, and you can help us free more slave ships. We will train you and pay you well. We also offer you access to a security fund for your injuries if you choose. A portion of every share you take will be placed in a central fund. The quartermaster has a list of the amounts you'll be paid if you're injured. You'll get paid as much as 600 pieces of 8 for a leg, all the way down to 100 pieces of 8 for an eye. You're welcome to see the list any time. Even the captain can be removed if the crew loses faith in me. If you vote me out, I will step down and find a place in the crew. You have till the end of the day to decide if you want to live by these customs. You're here on your own free will and accord, and we'll drop you off in Charlestown if you're not interested in me offer. That is all.
She stepped down, and the decks erupted with chatter. The chatter went on all night long, and even until sunup. The boatswain whistle blew the next day, and the crews mustered on the deck. The new quartermaster spoke up. Now's the time to choose. Board the ship you want to work on. The crew scrambled around. The Africans were moving much better. Their full bellies and sunshine agreed well with them. After a few minutes, the crews were set. Patrick counted the heads.
What is the head count, quartermaster? How many Africans will be leaving with the slave ship?
The admiral asked. The count is 32. There are 87 new crew members.
37 on the Robin and 50 on the Vendetta, the quartermaster replied.
Let us make sure they are trained properly and wish them well. Get to training,
April belted. The crews pitched in to help with the training and give the African vessel a chance.
Admiral, why do you keep calling us pirates instead of privateers? Pirates are associated with stealing, theft, and brutality. But privateering has the legitimacy of the king behind it, Sam Scurvy asked.
You answered your own question. This fleet is to show the world we don't need a government to live in peace. It doesn't make sense to seek out some king's blessing so we can steal and not actually call it stealing. No, the word privateering is associated with begging a government for permission. Instead, we be the pirates of Savannah. Arrgh!